I think you need a break and I need a break. You know, that sometimes you get to the place you preach so many weeks in a row and you feel like you start saying the same things over and over again. You know? And I was saying that to Jared, and he said, well, I'll preach for you if you want me to. God bless you, Jared. Yeah, they need a break and I need a break, and he's going to do it next Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, Lew, encourage him to come, though.
You what?
Encourage him to come. We don't want everybody to take a break.
I'm not leaving. I'm here. I'll be here next Sunday. I'm going to be here and do worship, but Jared's going to be preaching. No, they love to come here and preach, Jared. That's not a problem. All right. We're in the 11th chapter of the Gospel of John. And now, the public ministry of Jesus is over. And he's moving toward Jerusalem. And the conflicts have intensified to their highest level. And then Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead. All he did was give life to a man. At first, he gave sight to a blind man. He gave the power to walk to a lame man. And every time there's controversy and conflict. At first, it was conflict for Jesus. You healed this lame man on the Sabbath. Then it was conflict with the blind man who's been healed. Who healed him? Why are you going after him? He gave me my sight. Followers of Jesus are not immune from the conflicts that follow Jesus. And if we get blessed in Jesus' name, those same conflicts may be ours. And we've seen that in all of our journey here through the Gospel of John. Now we're coming to the most intense moments of conflict. And they're plotting to kill him. Why? What's his crime? What's his offense? He gave life. The world was a cemetery, and he brought life. Let's kill him. That's what's going on here. So we're in the Gospel of John, and we're in the 11th chapter. And we're beginning here with, it's 47, isn't it? I forgot what it was. Doesn't matter, I'll read it from up there. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing, they ask. Here's this man performing many miraculous signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our place, meaning their position, and our nation. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, and here's an irony in this, I'll think about it in a minute. One of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. And boy, how rudely he addresses his colleagues. I've never walked into a ministerial meeting and said, you guys are stupid. And that's exactly what he's saying here. I wouldn't dare. But anyway, you know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. And not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Wow, what a text. Well, as I said, there's a lot of irony in this text. And some is very disturbing. Disturbing for two reasons. First of all, it is Caiaphas and the priest's council that are talking. They're priests. Who do priests serve? They are called into the service of God. Who are these priests afraid of? Not God. They're afraid of Rome. That's the first irony. They're afraid of losing their position. What's at stake? For them, or for Caiaphas, it's a simple matter. The life of a man or my job. His life, my job. His life, my job. I don't know which one was my job. Sorry, Jesus, you lose. We'll kill you so I can hold on to my position. Their place. So not only are they afraid of Rome, they're afraid of losing their job. Their job is to serve God. How can they lose their job? God's not going to fire them. Here's the second irony in the thing, and that is that Caiaphas is the high priest, and the high priest position is a lifetime appointment. John, in a very ironic statement, says Caiaphas was high priest. Well, at least for that year. Pointing out how tenuous was his job. It was supposed to be a lifetime appointment, but that was at the pleasure of Rome or King Herod, and either one of them could become upset with Caiaphas and remove him from his job. Not God. God wouldn't fire him for being high priest, but Herod or Rome. They could get rid of him. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. 3 years later, after Jesus is crucified, Pilate is recalled to Rome. He commits suicide, and Caiaphas is deposed as high priest. The new high priest is appointed. Not so much for a lifetime appointment. Priests were supposed to serve God, more afraid of losing their job and afraid of Rome than they are loving or serving of God. But here's the second disturbing quality. I've had some of the same fears. I know Caiaphas. I understand it. I'm not going to be rude today, but y'all know what CYA means, don't you? And I have, all my life, recognized it. It begins when you're children. You're out there playing ball on a diamond. Somebody hits the baseball and goes flying and goes right through the window of a nearby house. What's everybody do? What do we do, Dorothy? Yeah, run. Everybody runs, except maybe the guy whose ball has flown through the window. What does he do? If he's going to get that ball back, guess what he has to do, or she has to do? They have to sacrifice themselves and go up to the door and ask for the ball back. And guess who's going to get the punishment for the ball flying through the window? Everybody who's playing baseball, the person that hit the ball? No. You know, protecting our position. I mean, it's something that goes on all the time. Self-preservation, and that's what Caiaphas is most concerned about. Not serving God, but self-preservation. Now, self-preservation is not a bad thing. Do you know what the Darwin Awards are? A very ironic kind of award. It's offered every year. And it's offered to the person who helps the gene pool the most by voluntarily extinguishing himself. Yeah. Eldon, I love it. Eldon's little saying, he says, I'm not saying anything about stupid people. Let's just take all the product warnings off of things and see what happens. And that's what the Darwin Awards is all about. They've been offered every year, you know. The Darwin Award for the guy that mistakenly grabs a jar full of gasoline and drinks it thinking it's a beer he's brought out to the garage with him. And he goes, but he knows right away it's gasoline because he spits it out. Spits kind of all over himself, spits it out, and he says, well, I got a taste in my mouth, I got to get rid of that, so he lights up a cigarette. That guy got the Darwin Award. There was a young man in Denver one year who got the Darwin Award. Decided he wanted to be a stunt man. But he was going to train himself to be a stunt man in Hollywood. He was going to go to Hollywood, going to succeed, he's going to be a stunt man. He was going to start off slow. His girlfriend, he said, you drive down the road about 30 miles an hour, and I'm going to bail out of this car to learn how to do that. Does he pick, a country road with soft shoulders and plenty of grass to roll off into? No, he goes down one of the busiest streets in Denver and plunges out while she's going 30 miles an hour on hard pavement. He won the Darwin Award for extinguishing himself. Or I almost forgot the other one. There's some others. There's just a variety of those Darwin Awards that are offered. So self-preservation, If you don't look out for yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, it's not necessarily a good thing. There's something to those Darwin Awards. Let's be at least have some common sense about the kind of things that we do. But we're talking about something. Self-preservation is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about securing our position. We're talking about a loss of priorities. We're talking about a fear that is because of a loss of what we call transcendence. That is, there's nothing greater than myself. And I got to take care of myself, maybe even at the expense of another. You know how it goes? Deflecting criticism by casually suggesting in people's hearing, it belongs to another, not to me. Starting rumors by feigning concern for someone's well-being. You know, I've really been concerned about their job performance. It's starting, and they're going to hurt themselves. And boy, we need to talk to them about this or do something. You know, throwing a rock, hiding your hand, self-preservation. Kathy had worked beside this girl for years at the same job, about 12, 15 years. And they had become good friends. And then one day a supervisor's position was open, and Kathy's friend applied for it and got it. She was frightened. Was she ready for this supervisor's position? And sure enough, a few weeks after she was named supervisor, she made a mistake. And it cost the company some money. And she was terrified. She was terrified. She had just gotten this job. She was afraid they would fire her from her position. She arranged it so that Kathy, who she had worked beside, they had gone together to do things on weekends. They had been good friends. She arranged it so that it looked like it was Kathy's fault. And sure enough, the mistake was discovered, and the blame pointed to Kathy, and it was she who got fired. Her friend couldn't understand. Why are you so upset? It was nothing personal. It was just, you finish it. What did she say? You what? Exactly right, Jim. That's what she said. Nothing personal. It's just business. It was very personal. That's what Caiaphas is doing. I can imagine him say to Jesus afterwards, after the trial and the arrest and the beatings, hey, Jesus, nothing personal. This is just business. Why do we do these things? Because we're free. Because we've lost any kind of sense of transcendence. Peter Berger, a sociologist, says if anything characterizes modernity, it is the loss of sense of transcendence, of a reality that exceeds and encompasses our everyday affairs. Caiaphas, high priest for God, had lost any sense of God. Did he not fear that one day he would have to stand before God and account for his actions? Have we lost that fear? Our lives are not submerged in, encompassed in a greater transcendence than our own being. But someday we will face that great transcendence, and we will have to account for our being. And there is such a thing as integrity and honesty and all of that. And when we lose a sense of that, guess what? We get reduced down to the smallest of sizes, and our fears become the greatest of fears. The smallest package in the world is a person wrapped up in himself. How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this? There was a woman whose husband died, and she was desperately alone. And she couldn't stand being alone. And she met a guy at a dance, and one thing led to another, and finally they got married. But he was nothing like her first husband. Now there was kind of an irony in this, because I knew her first husband, and he was a drunk. That's why he died. And she was miserable in the marriage because he was always drinking. This guy was nothing like that. But She was miserable in the second marriage. And wanted back, and she'd come into my office whining and complaining. He's nothing like my first husband. Oh, he was such a prince. He was great. He was wonderful. Really? Ma'am, have you forgotten? Apparently she had. Week after week. And she'd come in 2 or 3 times a week. Miserable. Couldn't stand it anymore. Had to talk to me. She was so miserable. Finally I said to her, I said, aren't you getting tired of this? Yes, but I don't know what to do. And I said, well, if you can't change your marriage, why don't you do something else? Well, like what? She said. Well, one thing comes to mind. Why don't you forget about your marriage for a while and go volunteer at the hospital and do something for somebody else? Amen. Right? Amen. You know what she said to me? Oh no, I'm in too much pain. I couldn't help anybody else. I'm in too much pain. I couldn't help anybody else. But how else are we going to get a sense of transcendence? Get out of the smallness of me. Find the greater reality. Not be terrified so much of what's happening to me and what I'm losing or not gaining. And finding something more in my life. Blaise Pascal, remember the guy? You know who he was? By the way, yesterday, I read it up a good once-in-a-century pi day. 3.14, 0.15, 9.23, 826, which is pi. So twice yesterday, 9:23 in the morning, 9:23 at night, or 9:28 in the morning, 9:28 at night, I forgot what it is, was the once-in-a-century pi day. It only comes around once every century. Anyway, Blaise Pascal, why I recently mentioned that, you're thinking, where's he going? He's gotten off the track again. This guy, he wanders everywhere. I don't know. We can't keep up with him. No, Blaise Pascal had been in calculus. That's what made me think of pi day. Yeah. You wonder, who do I blame for this? Blaise Pascal. This guy was obsessed. He was a genius. He had obsessions. And he had a tremendous ecstatic experience of God that changed his entire life. He was working on projects. He couldn't make a breakthrough. He was struggling. He was frustrated. He was angry. He was getting drawn closer and closer in, like a person who comes up too close to a painting and all you can see is just right in your face, and it has no dimension, it has no definition, and you have to stand back if you're going to get the greater picture of it all. And he couldn't do that. He was just so drawn in and almost captive to his frustration, and he finally fell asleep in exhaustion. And the next morning he awoke. And it was like God had revealed to him in just a brilliant moment his existence. And Blaise Pascal wrote in his journal, today, fire, fire, fire. He became a believer and a profound Christian leader. And he wrote, it is vain, O men, that you seek within yourselves the cure for your misery. Is all that you have inside. Is the smallness of you. He did say that. All your inside only leads you to the knowledge that it is not in yourselves that you will discover the true and the good. It's not in yourselves. I think there's two things to remember. There's a transcendent reality, God. Our lives are whole only in God. We are able to find release from fear and shame and guilt and all of those things that so plagued Caiaphas and that council because of God. And that life that God would have for us was won for us by the sacrifice of Jesus. Caiaphas concluded, it's better this one man die than everybody be destroyed. God agreed with him. In fact, Caiaphas, as beleaguered and as enslaved as much a prisoner of his own fears, the council as much of prisoners of their own fears as they all were, he still was able to speak the truth of God. It's just that Caiaphas thought, it's better for this man to die than I lose my position. God's thought was, it is better for one man to die than that all of my children go to hell. And that's the difference. Caiaphas was about self-preservation and the smallness of him. God was about new creation, redemption, and deliverance. Some years ago, you may not know this song. This song has bothered me ever since I heard it, although I did like the way Frank Sinatra sang it. Remember when the song Frank Sinatra sang that Paul Anka wrote for him? I Did It My Way? Stacy shook her head. No. Stacy, Frank Sinatra was, no, I'm just teasing. Generational difference here. He was really not my generation, he was my father's generation. Elvis sang it though, and Elvis was my generation. Elvis sang it too. I did it my way. But Paul Anka wrote it for Frank Sinatra, and he'd close all his shows in Las Vegas. I did it my way. Listen to the words of this. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway. And more, much more than this, I did it my way. I've had people ask me if that could be sung at their funerals. I have said, for goodness sakes, no. Why? How did this work for Frank? I did it my way. He was a mobster, a predator of young women, and a drunk. You really want to brag about that, Frank? I did it my way? How about when you get to heaven, you sing that song to Jesus? Because Jesus said, this is God now. I love my children. I love them so much, I cannot stand that one of them should perish. What am I going to do? I'll die for him. So go ahead, Frank. You stand before Jesus and sing, I did it my way. We have a choice. I did it my way, or I did it his way. Pray.